السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. نحييكم من الملتقى القطري للمؤلفين، وفي جلسة جديدة من فكر ومفكرين، ونستضيف شخصية من الدولة عزيزة طبعا علينا، من الجمهورية التركية، وهي شخصية متخصصة في علم النفس والقرآن الكريم. وهذا يمكن شيء جديد، قل من يكتب في هذا المجال ويضع الأبحاث في مجاله، ولكن احنا سعداء اليوم ان احنا نستضيف الأستاذة صالحة. والأستاذة صالحة يا ريت انها تعرفنا على نفسها. Dear Ms. Salha, can you introduce yourself so the people can know more information about you?
Thank you very much, Ms. Mariam. Firstly, I would like to express my gratitude to Minister of Culture. Yes, I'm from Turkey, Istanbul University, and my specialization is about psychology of religion. I graduated from Istanbul University, and I study on psychology of Islam, let's say Islamic psychology, and also near-death experiences, some other areas like transhumanism, posthumanism. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be with us. And we are really interested to know about your research, which you did about psychology and the Holy Quran. Can you tell us about this study, please?
Yes, it's a very important title. Thank you very much for giving me such a title, Psychology and Quran. Of course, it's a very wide topic. And I think here we should aim to indicate that knowledge is the best medicine and Quran is our guide. So we get the knowledge of Hakikat from Quran, as we all know. And as in one of the writings mentioned of Balkhi, who was one of the early scholars in psychology field, he says that religion is the greatest of philosophies. Therefore, man cannot be a philosopher until he becomes a worshipper. The greatest medicine is knowledge. So we should understand Quran as a guide, of course, as we all know. And here I'd like to talk about psyche and human being and how we understand it and what's the perspective of Quran, or what kind of perspective we should have from Quran. Maybe it is better to talk on them. Ibn Sina, Avicenna, says that the soul of man is like an oil lamp. Knowledge is like his light, and divine wisdom is like the olive oil in him, in human being. So in order to get the light, we need to clean the oil lamp. We need to overcome the disease of it. And we know that, as it is mentioned in the hadith, there is no disease that Allah has created except that he also has created its treatments. In fact, as we all know, the Quran has been sent down to guide people, to invite them to the belief of Tawheed, to teach them a new set of values in thought and life, and to guide them to learn consistent and correct behaviors for the benefit of people, for the benefit of us and society, and to attain the sublimity that will ensure human happiness. So we all need Quran for such reasons. But also Quran is a guide to train our nafs in a healthy way, to direct it to the ways that will ensure psyche's solid development. As mentioned in Surah Isra, it says, يا أيها الناس قد جاءتكم موعظة من ربكم وشفاء لما في الصدور وهدى ورحمة للمؤمنين. So there has come to you, oh man, there has come to you an advice from your Lord, and a cure for the ailments of your hearts, and guidance and mercy for the believers. So also in Surah Fussilat, 44th verse, it is for those who believe a guidance and cure. So we have such a brilliant guide in our hands. Heidegger says we shall never learn what is called swimming by reading a treatise on swimming. Only the leap into the river tells us what is called swimming. So we can never learn or we can never talk about psychology and Quran by looking at it from far. The only way to know it, the only way to experience it, to read it, to have it in our daily life, actual life, in every step. As you know, early Greek philosophers discussed human psyche, but in Islamic world, there were important names like Abu Zayd al-Balkhi, al-Ghazali in the early centuries. They really gave importance to mental and spiritual health. And the Muslim community experienced a significant era of growth, like Golden Age, and development between the 9th and 18th centuries. And we all know that during this period, there was an explosion in literature on human behavior and character reformation, يعني تذهيب الأخلاق, and spiritual medicine, طب الروحاني, and prophetic medicine, طب النبوي, with varying ontologies were seen and developments were seen in the Muslim world. So how all these happened? How all these were succeeded, I mean. Of course, it was by focusing on Quran and focusing on the role of spirituality in perfecting human well-being. They all succeeded because they took Quran as a real guide. And if we look at the Western world, we see that they, especially the Western psychologists and Western psychiatrists, they tried to analyze human development for years, and they saw the mind and the human being as a machine, which can be understood by artificial intelligence algorithm in a computer. But human being, mind, is beyond this. So we are all connected to a heart and a soul, ruh yani. So there are many questions which are unanswered, although many efforts were made to understand the human being and the mind in Western psychology. But when we look at Islam, if we want to understand mind and ruh of human being, we should look at Quran carefully and protect the inheritance of our ancestors, like Imam al-Ghazali, or like the recent Muslim scholars like Malik Bedri, who was a Sudanese author and wrote many influential books like The Dilemma of Muslim Psychologists and many others. Of course, undoubtedly, we have to show a serious interest in the study of our Islamic culture, starting with the Quran and Hadith, because Islam values the importance of good mental health and emotional well-being. And in our everyday practices, we already use psychology in Islam. The Quran is the best guide, as I said before, for the ones who suffer from stress, grief, and many other emotions. The Quran aims to lead us to a meaningful quality of life, guides us to overcome the inner turmoil. We have the peaceful self by the emotions and harmful conditioning as nafs al-ammara, or let's say commanding self. And the Quran did this over 1,000 years before Western psychology, much before. Contemporary psychologists, by introducing research methods in the natural sciences, have committed themselves only to the study of observational behavior of human being, in which observation and objective research are possible, but human is over this. What I try to say is that modern psychology investigates only behaviors of human being instead of searching on nafs, on psyche. Allah addresses the human mind and conscience with the verses in the Quran, purifies man through worship, and he shows the Adam the things that are beneficial in his personal life and social life. Quran is a real guidance for us. as it is stated in Surah Jasiyah, verse 20. هذا بصائر للناس وهدى ورحمة لقوم يوقنون. يعني this is clear indication for mankind and a guidance and a mercy for a folk whose faith is sure. Because Quran has been sent down to us as a guide, also like mentioned in Surah Nahl and verse 89, one day we shall raise from all peoples a witness against them from amongst themselves, and we shall bring you as a witness against your people. And we have sent down to you the book explaining all things, a guide, a mercy, and glad tidings to Muslims. So Quran encourages man to think about his own soul, his strange creation and sensitive formation. And with this, it encourages man to research his bodily formation through medicine, physiological and psychological and pathological maybe sciences approaches to study his soul and to learn its secrets. Because we all include Jawhar, which was given to us before we came to this earth. As a matter of fact, knowing oneself enables to know Allah. Like it is mentioned in the hadith, Man arafa nafsahu faqad arafa rabbahu. Also, we can find a very nice explanation for it in Ma'arij al-Quds, fi Madarij Ma'rifat al-Nafs by Imam al-Ghazali. So he who knows himself knows his Lord. So Quran contains many verses like that, explaining human nature, human fitra. These all describe various states of the soul, explain the causes of deviation and diseases, illnesses, and also ways of purification, training, and treatment. It is possible to reach the truth based on the verses in the Quran about the realities of human being, the haqiqah of human being, his qualities, his psychological conditions that ensure the formation of his personality in a healthy way, of course, and the basic motivations that direct his behaviors. The basic factors accompanying the formation and development of personality. Also, the realization of spiritual calmness of man may be possible by preparing a psychological discipline. And we can do it from the kalam, from the word of Allah, from Quran, since only Allah knows the best and the secrets of human beings' nature and formation. It's important to understand the human with the philosophical study of psyche, nafs, or the mind from an Islamic perspective, of course. Until now, we are talking about it, but this can only be provided by Islamic psychology. This can only be provided by taking the Quran as a guide, because we can't provide it with a psychology which denies ruh, which denies psyche. Islamic psychology, or the Quranic perspective, has a wide perspective which addresses psychology, neuroscience, psychiatry, and so on. Because human being is consisted of body and soul, jasad and ruh, badan and ruh, let's say. The word of nafs is one of the most important concepts in discovering who human being is, who insan is. The word nafs lexically refers to our soul, the psyche, heart, or mind also. So, as a summary, nafs is used to indicate our own self. Of course, there are some psychiatrists and psychologists who assume that it is used as a synonym of Freud's libido. But of course, there are some differences. In the early 19th also, Sigmund Freud, described states as the id, ego, and superego. But when we compare how Western psychology understands psyche, And how Islam handles nafs, we see differences, big differences. In the Quran, nafs has been used to refer to a specific part of ourself which has desires. The Islamic concept of nafs highlights the complex composition of the inner self. When we look at the stages of nafs, grades of nafs, we see that the Quran describes the nafs or self as operating out of one of the three states: nafs al-ammara, commanding self; nafs al-lawama, accusatory self; and nafs al-mutmainna, peaceful self. We can find explanations in Quran for how our nafs, especially nafs ammara, commands our psyche and tells us what to do, and it controls us and dominates us. It is like a horse and a rider, as it is mentioned in Ihya by Al-Ghazali. There is a very nice analogy. The analogy often given to describe the relationship between the qalb, aql, and nafs. It's like a rider and it's like a rider on the horse. And the balanced person is like the rider whose horse takes him where he wants to go. And where he wants to go is in accord with the will of God. And of course, various permutations of imbalance can be illustrated from the basic analogy. For instance, the case of the horse being reined in or hamstrung and going nowhere, the horse out of control and riding the rider to destruction, the horse under control, but being directed the wrong way. May Allah protect. So when we look at the stages of nafs, I'd like to remind the quote of Nietzsche. He says that man is something that shall be overcome. Man is a rope tied between beast and overman, a rope over an abyss. What is great in man is that he is a bridge and not an end. So he advises us also, saying this quote: make a choice between truth, hakikat, and the requirements of life. Why I'm mentioning this quote, we are between the hakikat and the requirements of life generally as a human being who has commanding nafs. Also here, it is better to compare the nafs concept with psyche. When we ask to a Western therapist, he will answer it by Freud's or Jung's approach. For example, Freud defined the psyche like an iceberg. The unseen side, which is under the sea, is bad, according to Freud. This had its form by some theories after Age of Enlightenment, of course. They all tried to present a definition of human psyche, but we can say that their definition is out of hakikat, out of reality. Of course, there are some correct parts in it, in those definitions, like unconscious side of human, conscious side of human, yes, but we should look at human psyche from the Quranic perspective, because unconscious side of human being is alami ghaib, in our understanding, in Islamic understanding. When we look at Freud's approach, we live on top of a hell, and inside of the hell, there are chaos, fire, badness, trouble. And again, according to Freud, we as a human being, we try not to be swollen by that hell, and we continue our existence like that. Abraham Maslow says that we understood the human being until his waist. When we look at Freud, we could not understand human's upper part. When you look at Freud's approach, he always talks about the other parts of body. Jung, after Freud, does not see human like an iceberg, but he sees the human as a sphere, and Jung believes that human has a central self, like Jawhar in the center of this sphere. It's not bad and chaotic. So when we look at Islamic perspective, these names, and also like anima and animus in Jung, we can name them like Jalal and Jamal. So these Jalal and Jamal sides of the human being must be balanced in the person himself. If these are not balanced, I mean Jalal and Jamal, these halves of spheres, if they are not balanced, we can see different social and psychological problems and debates. We all look for a balanced human being, and our future also, inshallah, will be good if we can base human being balanced. In everything, in fact, this balance means tawheed. In fact, in everything we look at tawheed and the understanding of tawheed. And in the balance of Jalal and Jamal, we can see Kamal rising. So we should understand the form of nafs, which has many stages, many grades. It's like a building which has many floors. As we mentioned before, we are created from ruh and body. Of course, we don't have a lot of knowledge about ruh, like it is mentioned in Surah Isra, verse 85. ويسألونك عن الروح قل الروح من أمر ربي وما أوتيتم من العلم إلا قليلا. They ask you about the spirits. Say, the spirit descends by the command of my Lord, command of Allah, but you have been given only a little knowledge about it. Very little knowledge is given to us about the ruh. But again, although we have limits, Allah wants us to have the idrak, to be aware of our ruh, because the ruh is eternal sight and badan, yani jasad, is mortal. This principle of being created ruh ma'al jasad cannot be understood by Western psychology only. Of course, I don't deny Western psychology, but as Muslims, we should take what is needed from Western psychology and what is needed from Quran together, because Western psychology denies soul, denies spirit, denies ruh. It is a kind of psychology without psyche. In Freudian approach, we see that human being is seen as bad and child is like something not like a child. We see a chaotic form, but in Quran, human being is created in the finest state. Like it is mentioned in Surah Tin, لَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ فِي أَحْسَنِ تَقْوِيمٍ. Yani indeed, we already created man in the best state. As Qatari Authors Group and as Arabs, you know Arabic all better than us, than me. If I ask you what is أحسن تقويم, if we think about what is أحسن تقويم, this shows us that we are not from this dunya, we are not from earth. Dunya means the lowest. When you look at etymologically, dunya means the lowest. And we are, as human beings, honored with the ruh of Allah. Even though we don't know the form of ruh, we are honored with the ruh of Allah. Allah honored us with that ruh. Al-Asma al-Husna also, which are the codes of the cosmos, the kaina, were thought to us. These are all lutuf by Allah to us. We are, in fact, eternal creatures. We are ashraf al-makhluq, the best of creation. The first thing that Allah created was my nur, says Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So we are created from that nur. All humanity had this nur, and we are the members of this hakikat, of this reality. I mean, the reality of Muhammadiyah, hakikat Muhammadiyah. So we should understand what human being is from this perspective. That's why human deserves respect, because we call a human being Hazreti Insan. So this is so important in psychological therapies also, because people come to therapists with all their troubles, problems, faults, sins, mistakes. And if therapist doesn't see them as Ashrafi Mahluk and as a man who deserves respect, then the patient leaves the therapy room with bigger stress. But if the therapists or the psychologists can see the hakikat of human, then solving the problem comes easily. So that is the Ahsani Taqweem side. Then there is another ayat, ثُمَّ رَدَدْنَاهُ أَسْفَلَ سَافِلِينَ, which means then do we abase him to be the lowest of the low, which means if we follow the commanding self, nafs ammara, then there is a place that we can go to the lowest of the low. So we should understand human being in this perspective in order to protect him, to fall into the lowest of the low, in order to stay as the Ashraf Makhluk and Ahsani Taqweem. We should take our journey on the best path, on the Sirat Mustaqim. Then those ayats are indicators that there is a journey to lower floors also, to make us rise up and to make us to go to lower floors. So we are in between that. So like to become between khawf and raja, hope and fear. So nafs ammara, the commanding nafs, is the ground floor of the building. There are zones in that floor. We have our shadows there, like Jung mentions, our envy, anger, desires, they all awaken in that floor. All human has these potentially within himself. You have this, I have this, the others have it. Here the question, what is nafs, or how nafs occurs, or what does occur in nafs, or what is the formation of nafs? There are many questions to ask related to it. Nafs is a half autonomic form of many stages, which has the potential to recover itself and directed by wise principles and natural laws. It has such a potential, alhamdulillah. Like our body, for example, if I cut my finger and if I make the wound clean, all the leukocyte fibrosities, for example, go there and try to heal it. Nafs has also similar potential to recover itself. Yani, subhanallah, it's really interesting. If we as Muslims obey the rules, at least minimum like salah, zakah, siyam, that only protects us not to fall down from that ground floor. We hold up at that ground floor. I mean, we stay there, but let us think what will happen if we hold up at that ground floor. We need to rise up. For example, in Surah Balad, it says, لا أقسم بهذا البلد وأنت حل بهذا البلد ووالد وما ولد لقد خلقنا الإنسان في كبد. So there are indicators here. There are signs here in these ayats, in these verses. For example, from the word kabad, we understand distress, trouble. Think about the nafs ammara, commanding nafs, is like a sphere, and human continues to exist in that sphere. With the future comes from fitra, from our nature. After some time, you don't fit into that sphere. It's like a different zone, and we need to remember that you are created to rise up. So these are the answers for what is the basic problem of human being. What is the crisis of existentialism, maybe. So the human needs to have takamul, advancement. In order to have this advancement, of course, human needs to climb an aqaba, the slope, or let's say a mountain, sometimes bigger, bigger than aqaba. So there is an aqaba, a slope in human beings' journey. What is this aqaba? We were created, human being was created. Then he came to ground floor. Now he needs to rise up. It's time to rise up. There are some conditions to rise up. Like if we have got morals of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and if we do whatever Allah says, and if we be away from whatever Allah says not to do, and if we have infaq, isar, I mean the akhlaq of giving whatever we have, giving like sadaqah, tasadduq, but it doesn't mean that we give only materialistic things. Sometimes we give from our sabr, sometimes we give from our ilm, sometimes we give from maybe a smile. So nawafil ibadat, extra prayings, azkar, I mean a lifestyle based on this, how Prophet Muhammad advised us, a lifestyle like this. If we experience such a life, the human can overcome many psychological diseases like depression or some other disorders. But if we hold on that ground floor, and if we cannot rise up to the other floors, we stay in that ground floor, we become prisoners of psychological illnesses. So this is the formula of getting out of these diseases. As it is known, anxiety means awham, wahm, yani angst. And in German, angst means to narrow something, to tighten something. That's why when we have psychological problems, the sadr zone, our sadr becomes like blocked. We feel like a prisoner. We become a prisoner. And we search for shifa, we search for cure in order to overcome all those psychological problems. So in order to break that or run that blockade or blockage, let's say, we can look at azan. It is said, hayya ala salah. It means get out of that zone that you're in and make it behind of you, leave it behind, and try to concentrate on your Lord and on your jawhar within you in order to overcome all these psychological diseases. And of course, we are praying, but without praying nafila or fasting nafila, it is impossible to rise up to the other stages of this form. For example, maybe you notice, but in search, we generally notice that people who go to sleep with wudu or who recite Quran before sleeping, they see nicer dreams because psyche feels relaxed. And dreams tell us all this form. Quran is a full isharat, or let's say it is itself full of isharats for us. We are always in a broadcast. Allah always sends us special messages. And it is important to get these messages. If we can't get them as it is wanted, as it is expected, and if we can't get started experiencing such things, pathological things will block our life, block our sadr, and also some technological elements. If we don't use them for the sake of Allah, for the sake of Quran, they will block our tafakkur, they will block our contemplation, and they will block everything, every thought on ayats, contemplation on ayats. If we know how to see the kainat, if we know how to read the ayats in the cosmos, because everything is an ayah, I mean, listening is an ayah, speaking is an ayah, or the looks of an orphan is an ayah. So we should see the ayahs in everything. How will it be possible? It is possible by contemplation, via thinking by qalb, of course. In Surah Baqarah, it says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ وَارْكَعُوا مَعَ الرَّاكِعِينَ. Of course, it has got another meaning also, but here, let us think about what does iqama mean? What does iqama salah mean? Does it only to pray salah? It means to stand in a lifestyle between two waqts of salahs, and try to experience it as a lifestyle, like always to be in the hal, in the status of isar, in the status of rida, in the status of itminan, in the states of raja. And it asks from us to experience it in the salah, while in salah, and also between two waqts of salah. So in actual life, it is wanted, it is expected from us to experience and obey it. So life will be much better with these things. And because the float comes like that, float in our qalb, when we come to sujood, for example, we feel there's a different light. We feel that there's a different passage that we can enter, and Allah connects with us, and we connect with Allah. So we can make it more better. We can rise up to the other floors much better with some waridat and tulu'at. And it will help us to shine our face, because if the qalb shines, the face shines. That's why we tell people that when I saw you, I felt much better. I feel shining in my sadr. That's why maybe we say, Ya Nuri, Ya Nur Aini. This Nur comes from Allah. And that can be found in our heart, because like in Owisal's theory of sudur, we come from Allah and we make a circle on this earth, and we go back to Him. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. It's the theory of sudur, you know. So we are linked with the information in the skies. After all these things that we can have an ilm of hikmah, full of hikmah, let's say, like it is mentioned, الذين آمنوا وتطمئن قلوبهم بذكر الله ألا بذكر الله تطمئن القلوب. So our hearts will be satisfied only with the adhkar for Allah. If our ilm does not include hikmah, it is only science. It is not over science, just science, but not hakikat. Because if it includes hakikat, if it includes reality of our creation and the guidance of Quran, our senses, our sensations get the correct messages, and the brain operates all those information on knowledge, which was uploaded before on us. As you know, in our brains, there is a center for pleasure, and it plays a role in how we feel pleasure. It is called dopamine, as it is known. It's a type of neurotransmitter. Our body makes it, and our nervous system uses it to send messages between nerve cells. That's why it's sometimes called a chemical messenger, you know? It's a big part of our unique human ability to think and plan. It affects many parts of our behavior, our thinking, of course, first, then behavior, then physical functions like motivation, attention, movement, maybe kidney function, heart rate, and so on. But let me tell you before we finish, it's not only dopamine which gives pleasure. All amino acids give the pleasure. If we experience the pleasure too much, we want more and more. Human being never, the nafs doesn't get satisfied. We need more doses. I remember Professor Mustafa Mertar, he gives a wonderful example related to this, and I'm also speaking from his books related to Quranic perspective. He says that because dopamine helps us to get the pleasure, we can give a new name to another center which gives us again pleasure, that is called nuramin. He is, of course, producing this name. He's naming it as nuramin because pleasure, according to Professor Mertar, nuramin can give us pleasure to our hearts. So we don't have a pleasure system only in our brains. We have got a pleasure system on our hearts also. Yani, which I mean, pleasure does not come from only chocolate, or for maybe for women, it doesn't come from shopping only or some other pleasure points, but there are people who serve for humanity. For example, Qatari authors, mashallah, you are serving for humanity, for culture, something wonderful. And this is also a center for, let's say, nuramin, in quotation, dopamine. This gives us pleasure. And for such people who are serving humanity like that, with their nuramins, with their sadr, with their heart, there is an ayah in Surah Yunus, verse 62, لا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. So for the friends of Allah, if they are friends of Allah, inshallah, there is no huzn, there is no anxiety in this world. So isn't it the real paradise, Jannah on earth already? So we have all these potentials within us, and our aim is to get closer to that nur zone, and we need to discover that jawhar, that sustenance in our inner self, let's say, because we have got three parts, like outward, inward, and hidden sides. So we can find that hidden side, like Picasso says, inside you there is an artist you don't know about, and all children are artists. The problem is how to remain an artist once he grows up. So we have all these arts, how to look at kainat from the Quranic perspective. We all have diamond in us. The key is to allow us ourselves to explore it and to know where we can find the key. It's not about how, it's not about where. It is about to discover it and to get it, inshallah, like Qatari authors, Qatari Forum for Authors does this, because it tries to find the key, like Mullah Nasreddin's key. Let us finish with this short story. A man was walking home late one night when he sees an anxious mullah. You know, Juha Nasreddin is very popular in Turkey, and Mullah Nasreddin was down on all fours and crawling on his hands, on knees on the road. And he was searching frantically under a street light for something on the ground. And the passerby asked, Mullah, what have you lost? And he said, I'm searching for my key, he answered, sounding very anxious. And the man said, I'll help you look. Don't worry, let's look together. And he asked, tell me, Mullah, tell me, Juha, do you remember where exactly did you drop the key? And Mullah answered, I think I lost it in my house garden, inside my house. And the man got shocked. And he jumped up and shouted Mullah Nasreddin, then why are you searching for the key out here in the street? And Mullah answered, because there is more light here than inside my house. So it is important where to look. It is important to discover where to look the key. And the key for us, the key for all human beings, for all humanity, is to look at the Quran and look at the kainat from the perspective of Quran. Thank you very much.